Okay, it's beer o'clock on Real Ale Craft Beer. Today we got a beer from Nøgne, and it's a bottle of their bitter. It's one of their session beers, 4.5% ABV, and it's been brewed with East Kent Golding hops. There you go. There's the Nøgne bottle cap, and this is going to be a really interesting review for me because look at that. Well, first of all, look at that lovely opener. It's going to be a really interesting review because every beer I've reviewed from Nøgne has either been an IPA, double IPA, Imperial Stouts, or they're two captains, they're double IPA. We reviewed their 500 the other day, which was wonderful, a really good beer, but that was 10%. So it's interesting to see or to taste a beer from Nøgne that's just a regular session beer that's going to refresh you. And out of the beers that Nøgne sent me to review, this one was the one that I thought, wow, this one really interests me, just to see the Norwegian kind of take on a British style beer. It's a bottle conditioned beer. They've asked to leave the sediment in the bottom of the bottle, so we will for now. I'll show you later on the sediment, but it's a slightly hazy golden amber coloured beer with a 2-finger nice frothy Whitehead. There is a bit of sediment kind of hanging around there in the glass, but it's very fine. Let's get the aroma. And yes, it smells like a British bitter. It's nice and biscuity. And it's definitely that East Kent Golding hop, because it's ever so slightly fruity and spicy all at the same time. It's nice and mellow and relaxed. I'm going to dive into this session bitter. Cheers. Oh yes, that's really good, and I've got a number of reasons why this is a really good beer, and I'm going to share them with you. Number one, I love session beer. I like going to the pub. I like drinking 4, maybe 5 pints at a push. I also like these big beers that I have 1 or 2 of, or 3 in an evening at a push, and wake up 3 days later unconscious, still unconscious. I wake up 3 days later and I've had a great time. I enjoy it. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm having a bit of a joke with you. But there's something about these beer styles. You can brew Imperial Stouts perfectly. You can brew Saisons perfectly. You can brew Porters perfectly. And this is an important one because a lot of people drink session bitter. This is a best bitter. It's a style of its own. And if you can brew a best bitter really well, like this, then it's one of the best styles of beer in the world. I pick up a really nice soft water quality. With a 4.5% kind of low ABV beer, there's a lot more chance for you to take in the quality of the water, and it's a nice soft water. I imagine that Nøgne, you must have a stream of some kind which they use to brew their beer with, like a natural spring. Because this is nice and soft, it's fresh, it's clean, and it's probably 90% of the beer's ingredients is the water at 4.5% ABV. Next, I want to talk about the malts, and it's important. It has to, with a good bitter, everything has to work well. If one of the ingredients doesn't work, is not working properly, then the whole beer falls down. I've tried so many best bitters and so many have failed on me. But recently I've tried some really good best bitters, and it gives you that kind of sense of pride. It's a British style. It's something, as I said, I drink. I like to drink. And it's funny because it's taken kind of I reviewed Bristol Beer Factory's best bitter. There's 7, which was wonderful. There's a few other regional breweries that get it right. They make good best bitters. I've reviewed a Swedish best bitter by Half Idiot. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a really good session bitter. And then you get some of the bigger, pardon me, breweries in the UK, which they had brewed really good best bitters like this, and then they started to mess around with it. They started to fast cask it, where the cask hits the bottom of the cellar, and you can kind of open it within a couple of hours, and that's all chemicals. And then they started to mess around with the flavours, and some of these regional brewers, their session bitters all taste the same. It's got that kind of artificial cherry taste to it. You know who you are. I'm not going to start naming names, but why? I love Nøgne, but why is it taking a Norwegian brewery to show us how to brew good beer? Why don't we go back to brewing good beer regionals, and then more people will drink it, rather than mass-produced lager? Moving on to the hops, there's lemon, there's a little bit of earthiness in there. It's slightly spicy and it's got a nice finishing bitterness that's not too crazy. It's not a crazy bitterness, it's a bitterness that balances nicely with the malts to give you that bittersweet taste. This is a nigh on perfect best bitter, and I was right. I had an inkling that Nøgne would get it right, and they've got it right. This is wonderful. I just want to quickly show you the sediment. If you're new to real ale and craft beer, and you're wondering why Nøgne have asked you on the back of the bottle to leave the sediment in the bottle, here's the reason why then. Can you see all of that kind of yeast? There you go. Some people don't like it. It doesn't look great. I would preferably, always put the yeast in the glass. I like it. It's just a personal thing. Some do, some don't. Rating them for Nøgne bitter. That is a perfectly balanced, amazing session bitter that if I found it in the UK, I would drink it probably on a daily basis. It's one of them beers where you finish work, you want a couple of good beers, and yeah, that is fantastic. For a best bitter, that gets a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 from Real Ale Craft Beer. Please put your comments in the comments box. Thanks for Nøgne for sending the beer, and cheers.